First and foremost, I apologize for not having a microphone. We're gonna get one, make an improvement there eventually, but bear with us for now. We're gonna do a video series, kind of a predator trapping 101. Start out with like coyote, bobcat, fox, kind of best practice from trials and tribulations out online. What works best for me, what works best for me might not be what works best for you, might not be what works best for somebody else. But today I'm going to start with the trap setup in general, what traps I like to use, what I think's good, bad, what works for me, kind of little tips and tricks that if you're just starting out or you're not real familiar with it, you might not pick up or you might struggle with, things that you might not realize that does and does not make a difference, and try to kind of streamline it for anybody getting into it. I feel that it's important for trappers to, and not to try to get into a speech about it, but there's a lot of information out there. It's 21st century, of course there is, but compared to other hobbies, other items, other things people can get into, there's not as much. People kind of get out of it. People don't think about it. So if there is things that can help make people successful at it, that want to get into it, to make them pick it up fast, be good at it, so they want to stay in it. I think it's important to kind of share experiences and what works, because if not, it is something that'll die out. So with that being said, I'm gonna kind of get everything set up here, back side by side in, and we'll start going over trap setup. So start out, first things first, I like to use Victor's. I think that's probably the best bang for your buck. It's a number 2 Victor coil spring. Dukes are probably the most widely available trap you'll find, and they're not bad, but I would say, well, I don't think there's anybody who makes a bad trap, but Duke's not bad, but I think it's probably one of the worst you can buy, if that makes any sense. Victor is probably, in my opinion, the best bang for your buck. Something I do like is that the swivel for the trap and chain comes off the bottom center. A Duke comes off the side. If you have a Duke and you have an animal caught, say he ends up being in there, the better part of a day, if he got in shortly after you set the trap, whenever he's jerking and pulling, he's pulling sideways. So he's actually sliding his foot out over here to a lesser part of the trap versus pulling straight out on the jaw where his pads are going to be pulled straight. This just works better. There is one thing I don't like about this, and I'll get to that in the next video, that I'll elaborate on a little bit, but this is a pain for a few things, and I think it's something that caused some people to miss some sets, not only on these, but pretty much any trap. With that being said, Victor and Duke's probably your most available brands if you were to go to a Bass Pro or to a Cabela's or whatever your local store is that sells traps. You can get if you're looking at actual trapping companies or companies that sell trapping supplies, two that's close to me that I think of off the top of my head is like RP Outdoors or Okie Trapping Cable. You can order a lot more robust traps, which without a doubt, to be honest, are better traps than a Victor. But the cost, I don't have enough problems with these to make that money, to make it worthwhile. If you take care of your traps, they'll take care of you, and a Victor's really all you need. With Dukes, they do tend to have the jaws try to come out, especially if you start catching a lot of coyotes with them. The jaws will try to come loose. The dogs tend to bend a little easier, especially when you catch coyotes. They'll always bend the dog. Cats, fox, they generally won't do that. As far as trap size, I prefer a number 2. And what I'm about to say may be a little controversial to some people, but I firmly believe that you do not need anything bigger than a number 2 for coyotes. A lot of people my dad included, uses number 3s. I think that starts, and this is getting into the next thing I was going to talk about with your pan tension. There are some good and bad points on both sides of the fence. For me personally, once again, like I was saying, what works for me might not be what works for you, but I've set a lot of traps, ran a lot of lines, and I firmly believe that no pan tension is probably the best method. I know a lot of people want to set 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds to try to, try to not get target animals, or I'm sorry, to get not to get non-target animals. I don't think that's a very good method, and the reason why I think a thought of that side of the fence is that if you've got a 3-pound pan tension, that you're only going to catch your target animals. You're not going to catch possums. You're not going to catch coons, or as many, I should say, which is true. And the other thought is that you don't get as many bad catches because they are committed when they step on the trap. And I think there's a partially true comment to that. But on the flip side of the argument, the side of the fence I'm on, and that I will defend every day of the week, is by going to that bigger trap, by going to that number 3. For one, they're a little bit slower. I don't care what anybody says. A number 2 is a much faster trap than a number 3. So I think part of the bad catches they're talking about are just from having a number 3 and having the slower jaws. They might be stronger, but the jaw spread's bigger. It's more distance to travel. And I think they also go to number 3 because, to be honest, I would say most animals that come to a trap will never fully commit. No matter how hard you try, you can use a kneeling pad, you can do whatever you want, rubber boots, you're still going to leave some scent, it's still going to be disturbed. You're not going to have enough animals fully commit to make that worthwhile. So I think by doing that heavier pan tension, they're getting more bad catches because you really not ever have anything fully commit. And then to mitigate that bad catch, they want to go to a bigger trap, which then it causes, it's more likely for the animal to break that bone once he's caught, and then once he breaks that bone, it's just time sticking as far as him getting out. With number 2, you don't have that bone break, so you have a lot stronger, in my opinion, an actual better hold, stronger catch. And if you run that number 2 with no pan tension, yes, the only con to that is you're going to catch possums, you're going to catch coons. That's where having a good catch pole, let them out if you don't want them, or just going ahead and catching them anyway, because you're still trapping. It's still fun. If you start trapping early in the year, when your season starts, at least for around here, season starts early enough that you can catch a rash of that kind of stuff early. By the time that bobcats really start running and fox really start running, fox tend to be around the 1st of January here. Bobcats, they run best. You catch the most last week of January, first week of February. You can have most of that junk kind of caught out. And then you catch a lot more of your target species. So a number 2 is all you need. In my opinion, if anybody says different, they're wrong. I do know that, and don't get me wrong, number 3 is a good trap, but I think a number 2 Victor is the best bang for your buck. Trapping up to coyote-sized animals, it's plenty big enough for that. Run your pans loose. Run a number 2, you get a lot of good catches. You don't have. I don't catch many by the toes. It does happen. No matter what you do, it's going to happen. A bug on the lens. No matter what you do, it's going to happen. But I think that's the best method there. You can figure that out for yourself, but that's where I'm at on it. Talking about the pan tension, when you buy your trap new, given I don't have any new traps set up right now, or I'd like to, when you buy your trap new, you'll want to adjust your pan tension. Rather you want it to be fully loose. I run mine fully loose, or rather you want to have measured tension on it. What I do is I'll get the bolt there and I'll back that nut off just until it's fully loose. Once it's loose, I'll get a screwdriver on the threads, hit it with a hammer, booger those threads up. That way it don't back out, because it will happen eventually. Once you do that, once you get your desired tension, well, if the trap has died, your desired tension. But if you're working with a new trap, don't set your tension yet. Back it off a little bit. Go ahead and booger your threads up. I'd get it loose, booger your threads up to that extent, and then after that, move on to dyeing your set. When you're dyeing your traps, really, I'm going to say it don't matter. I use speed dip. I think it's just the fastest, easiest, best method. No matter what kind of dye you use, it's going to work better if your traps are a little bit rusty. If they're rusty enough to prevent them from working correctly, from going off fast, you can soak them in vinegar and get some of that rust off. But if there's a little bit of rust, your dye will stick best. You can use walnuts, leaves, speed dip, the stuff that comes in a bag. I think it's called logwood. The powdered stuff, it all works pretty good. As long as they are dyed, I think that's the main thing. They don't have to be real thick in dye. They don't have to be real heavy in dye. You just don't want a shining trap sitting down there. And also, after they're fully dried, that does help a little bit with keeping scent off of them. You have less traps dug up by fox and coyotes from smelling the traps if they're dyed than you do if they don't dyed. I don't think it makes a huge difference, but it does definitely make a difference. Once you have them dyed, if you're going to try to set your pan tension, like I said, I prefer to run them loose on a number 2. If you're running a bigger trap, I might could see setting some tension to it, but I just think that you're starting a series of, like I said earlier, you're setting more pan tension, so now you're getting less sets because animals never really do commit, and then you go to a bigger trap to mitigate those bad sets. So that bigger trap's unnecessary. You know, we do want to be as humane as possible, and I think a number 2 is just your best bet. So once you've got that, once your trap's dyed, then by adjusting your screw here, you can set your pan tension if you want to do that. The reason I say after the dye is the dye will affect how it works. So going to actually how you set up your trap. You can some people stake them solid. Some people prefer to use metal drags like hook drags. I use a drag that's like I'll use a log. I'll use whatever I can find around the set to make sure it's solid. The hook drags, around here anyway, there's some spots that work phenomenal. There's some spots that coyotes will get away from you. They do tend to work for cats because cats will always go to the thickest stuff. Coyotes will try to hit a road or hit a field if they can. But I prefer to use a log. Depending on how open it is, I'll find a bigger log or a bigger piece of wood. If it's relatively thick stuff, I'll use a pretty small one. I prefer to use a short chain. I do have some traps that's got long chains on them. You know, if I need to set that drag back from the set. A lot of people who stake them solid like to use chains more. I don't like to stake them solid because I like the animal to get away from the set and not mess my set up. That way you can reset there again and again and again through that season without messing your set or having to move it or anything like that. So I like a short chain. You can use baling wire or tie wire. If I use tie wire, I'll use 4 wires. If I use baling wire, I'll use 3. The traditional square baling wire. I like the wire compared to the chain because it's really anecdotal, but to me they tend to hang up better than they do with the chain. Now, given with the chain, a lot of times with a cat, when you first get to a set, if you have a cat, he'll tend to jingle the chain once and then hide, as a coyote will keep trying to jerk and get away. So with a longer chain, you can hear them better, maybe find them if they do tend to get too far from your set. But I think the better payoff is with the wire because they still get away from the set, but they do tend to hang up faster than they do with a long chain. Now, I do keep long chains, like I said, in case I have a scenario where I need to set my drag far back from my trap or anything like that. And I don't think it's a huge difference, but I do think that it works better with the longer wire. When I do have the traps with the long chain, I'll just set the wire long enough to go around my drag or whatever. You know, that's, as you say, that's usually about the diameter of drag I'll use. The main thing is that it's solid and not green. Coyotes will actually chew through a green log. They will not chew through one that's not green or dead. So as long as it's strong and not green, that's really what you're looking for there. I'll get more into that in the next video. Try to keep this one from getting too lengthy, too monotonous. But like I said, if you 3 baling wire, 4 if you're using tie wire. And as you run them throughout the year, once that wire gets damaged, you can you can replace them or whatever really easy. You can carry a roll of it in your bucket or your basket or your bag or whatever you use. Really simple. I've actually used slider cables for these, and it works, but it don't work as good. I think if you're going to do it, either chain, you can put as much swivel springs in it, whatever you want. I prefer just the one swivel on the trap and no springs. I think that stuff's more sales gimmicks. Does it do things? Does it make differences? Yeah, but once again, I think that's another thing that's small enough of a difference it really don't matter, and you spend more time and trouble with it than it actually pays back as far as the positive that comes out of it. So we're going to set up a new trap now. Here's one I've already got set up. I'll take a trap here that I've got not set up. We pretend it was new, go through all the dye, whatever you want, but I'll start there, and we'll get it set up and start from the beginning. So here's the trap's not rigged up. If it was a new one, we'd be at the stage right after you dyed it. One thing I forgot to mention a while ago, before you dye your traps, if they're not new, and if you've said on the previous year, I always just knock the dust off of them by setting them and dry firing them. Get all the dust, all the mud. It's raining right now, so I'm sorry this one looks like it does, but it'll get most of the dirt, most of the mud off. That's as far as I go. Then I dye them. I usually do that again before I wire them up, but that's just because I like dry firing them. It's kind of fun. So as far as length, if I'm running the short chain, what I'll do is I'll generally do 3.5, 4 foot, which just so happens to be the width of the bed of my side-by-side. That's what I've been running ever since I bought this thing. So like I said, I'm using tie wire, so I'll cut 4. With baling wire, I would use 3. Baling wire is better, but as time goes on, it's getting harder and harder to find. So tie wire has kind of been what I've been going over to. The best way is to do this before you dye your trap. That way your wire's dyed too. Being that I've already got all my traps rigged up, and it's a little bit later in the year, we're gonna say if you're doing it at post dye after you dye it, which really it's not that critical, but like I said, the dye does help with the scent a little bit. So if you do this before you dye it, it helps with the scent, but I think there's a difference there just from what I see. So once you get your 4 wires, cut them all the same length, about 3, 3.5, 4 foot. 4 foot might be a little long, but just depends on where you're at and what you're using it for. So kind of get all your wires straightened out, get them together, take through your eye into your chain, leave about 3.5, 4 inches to make the best hold. Something I think is pretty critical here to get the best twist on them is do 1 wire at a time. See if I can get there. Do 1 wire at a time on them. I'd say as long as you twist 3 or 4 times, you're good. But you get a lot stronger, much better looking tie on your wire if you do 1 wire at a time. Kind of like any other time you're tying baling wire, tie wire, I guess. But so that's going to be our finished product as far as tying it to the trap. And forgive me for being a little scatterbrained on this here, but so that's what that's going to look like. Something I do recommend that will pay off in the long run, but really don't make a difference now, is these ends here, these loose ends, to get a pair of pliers and go ahead and twist them down. The difference that's going to make is when you've got a cat or a coyote or a fox that's really tied up and balled up in the bush, that those aren't going to stab you in the finger when you're trying to get the trap loose, and you can barely reach up in there, and it's just a pain in the ass and it gets old. So once you do that, I'll generally run my hand down them again, try to straighten them out one more time. Do a semi-half kind of braid to them. It's a lot easier if you're using baling wire because you got 3. But if you kind of twist them, braid them, just rough general idea of that, it gets them a little bit stronger. Forgive me if I'm not in the camera here, but it gets them a little bit stronger. Try to beat the rain. Strength in numbers, and you don't want any wire isolated there by itself. Once you do that, kind of press them all together again. Like I said, it don't have to be a perfect braid or twist or anything like that, but just generally where you're not going to get a wire that's isolated by itself, where they're tight enough to do that. Take your longest one, take it and I'll just wrap it a few times to kind of keep the end of it together. That's that. So I just wrap it up, twist it around the trap, and do it like that. And then if I hadn't already dyed my trap yet, I'd now dye it. Generally I'll do this before dyeing mine, but I've done this just for the purpose of the video. We're going to go out on the trap line, kind of go over some basic setting the trap, walk through sets, dirt hole sets, the basic two when it comes to predator trapping. If you're just getting into it, that's the two to work on first. Brush piles are great, stuff like that. We'll kind of cover that kind of stuff. But thanks for watching. If you liked it, liked it. If you thought it was ignorant, dislike it. And if you'd like to watch something like it again, go ahead and subscribe. I appreciate it, and we're going to head out on the trap line and set a couple traps.